Dr. Zefarian Kefvala stood before the massive holographic display in the Central Genetic Research Laboratory of Arcturus Prime, his forearms moving in synchronized patterns as he manipulated the three-dimensional DNA models floating before him. The laboratory, carved from crystalline formations deep within the planet's core, hummed with the energy of 1,000 quantum processors working in perfect harmony. Around him, dozens of the galaxy's most brilliant scientific minds from across 17 different species worked at their stations. The crystalline entities from Sigma Draconis, beings of pure silicon and light, processed genetic data at impossible speeds. A hive mind collective from the Andromeda spiral shared thoughts instantaneously across their network of 12 interconnected bodies. Even the ancient Voidwalkers, beings who existed partially in another dimension, had sent representatives to participate in this unprecedented gathering. This was the Galactic Genetic Symposium, the most important scientific conference in over 10,000 years. Representatives from every major civilization had come together to share their most advanced genetic research, pooling their knowledge to unlock the secrets of biological evolution across the galaxy. Zefarian was the symposium's lead researcher, a position he had earned through centuries of groundbreaking work. His species, the Veltar, were considered the undisputed masters of genetic science. Their own evolution had been guided by careful genetic manipulation for over 50,000 years, transforming them from simple aquatic creatures into beings of incredible intelligence and physical capability. The Veltar possessed 4 brains, each specialized for different types of thinking. Their bodies could regenerate from almost any injury, and their lifespans measured in millennia rather than decades. They could survive in the vacuum of space for extended periods and process information at rates that made quantum computers seem sluggish. To them, genetic perfection was not a goal but an achieved reality. "Attention, colleagues," Zefarian announced, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that made Veltar's speech so distinctive. "Today we examine the genetic samples collected from the Outer Rim territories. Most of these specimens represent primitive evolutionary stages, but they provide valuable insight into the early phases of biological development." The first samples were as expected. The Gornathi from Kepler 442, with their simple double helix structures optimized for survival in high radiation environments. The aquatic delphinids from Wolf 359, whose genetic modifications allowed them to process water for both breathing and nutrition. The silicon-based miners from Proxima Centauri, whose crystalline DNA structure enabled them to literally consume and process metal ores. Each species showed clear evolutionary purpose. Their genetic codes were elegant, streamlined, and perfectly adapted to their environments. The assembled scientists nodded in appreciation as Zefarian explained the sophisticated mechanisms behind each organism's survival strategies. Then came sample designation SOL3 Homo sapiens. The moment the human DNA structure materialized in the holographic display, a ripple of confusion passed through the laboratory. Zefarian's 4 eyes focused on the genetic model, his secondary brain automatically beginning detailed analysis while his primary brain struggled to process what he was seeing. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, his harmonic voice carrying a note of disbelief. "Run the analysis again." The quantum processors hummed louder as they re-examined the sample. The result remained unchanged. What floated before them was perhaps the most bizarre genetic structure any of them had ever encountered. Dr. Crystalline Harmony, the lead representative from the silicon entities, pulsed with confused light patterns. The structure appears to contain massive amounts of apparently non-functional genetic material. "Junk DNA," added Dr. Nexus 7 from the HiveMind Collective, their 12 bodies speaking in perfect unison. "Over 98% of the genetic code appears to serve no identifiable purpose." Zefarian manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on various sections of the human genome. What he saw defied everything he understood about efficient evolution. "Look at this redundancy," he said, highlighting certain gene sequences. The same functions are coded for multiple times using entirely different mechanisms. It's as if someone designed this genome using every possible solution to the same problem simultaneously. The assembled scientists began to murmur among themselves. In all their studies of biological life throughout the galaxy, they had never encountered anything so seemingly wasteful and inefficient. "The organism appears to lack any significant physical specializations," observed Dr. Voidwalker Epsilon, their partially dimensional form flickering in and out of visibility. No enhanced strength, no radiation resistance, no natural weapons, no environmental adaptations. The lifespan is absurdly short, added another researcher. Barely a century at maximum. Most of our subjects live for thousands of years. Zephyrian continued his analysis, growing more incredulous by the moment. The brain structure is primitive, using only chemical neurotransmitters instead of quantum-entangled thought processes. The body requires constant maintenance through sleep, shows rapid deterioration with age, and can be killed by the simplest environmental changes. He paused at one particular section of the genetic code. And, yet, there are these strange sequences that appear to be dormant. Massive sections of the genome that are present but not expressed. It's almost as if. He trailed off, shaking his head. Almost as if what? Prompted Dr. Harmony, her crystalline form resonating with curiosity. Almost as if this organism was designed with capabilities that it simply doesn't use, Zephyrian replied. But that makes no evolutionary sense. Why would natural selection preserve genetic information for abilities that provide no survival advantage? The HiveMind Collective processed this information across their networked consciousness. Perhaps this species represents an evolutionary dead end, they suggested. A failed experiment in biological development. This explanation seemed to satisfy most of the assembled scientists. Failed evolutionary branches were not uncommon, and it would explain the seemingly random and inefficient genetic structure they were observing. Zephyrian, however, continued to study the human genome with growing amusement. The more he examined it, the more absurd it seemed. Look at their immune system, he said, highlighting another section. It's constantly fighting against itself, attacking the body's own tissues. And their reproduction rate is extremely low, requiring two separate individuals and producing offspring one at a time. Laughter began to ripple through the laboratory, a sound that ranged from the harmonic chimes of the crystalline entities to the subsonic rumbles of the gas giant dwellers. Perhaps we should add this to our collection of evolutionary curiosities, suggested one researcher. Indeed, Zephyrian agreed, his scientific pride swelling. Behold, colleagues, a genetic structure so poorly designed that it violates every principle of efficient evolution. This organism, these humans from the Sol system, represent perhaps the most imperfect genetic code we have ever encountered. He manipulated the display to highlight the most glaring inefficiencies. Observe the contradictions. Genetic coding for both cooperation and aggression. Instincts for both survival and self-sacrifice. Intelligence paired with emotional irrationality. It's as if this species was designed by a committee of organisms who had never communicated with each other. The laughter grew louder. Dr. Nexus 7 spoke for many when they said, "It is remarkable that such a poorly designed organism could survive at all, let alone develop space travel." Ah, but they barely have space travel, Zephyrian corrected. Our preliminary scans show they've only managed to leave their planet for brief periods. Most of their population has never even left the surface of their homeworld. This revelation prompted even more amusement. The idea that a species with such flawed genetics could develop even rudimentary technology seemed almost miraculous. Perhaps, Zephyrian continued, his voice taking on the tone of a lecturer addressing students, this species serves as an example of what happens when evolution proceeds without proper guidance. We Veltar have guided our own genetic development for 50 millennia, perfecting ourselves with each generation. The humans, by contrast, appear to be the result of completely random genetic drift. He gestured toward his own body, a testament to genetic perfection. We have eliminated disease, extended our lifespans indefinitely, optimized our intelligence, and enhanced our physical capabilities. We represent the pinnacle of what genetic science can achieve. The assembled scientists nodded in agreement. Each of their species had, to varying degrees, taken control of their own evolution. The idea of leaving genetic development to pure chance seemed barbaric to them. The humans, Zephyrian concluded with obvious disdain, represent everything we have evolved beyond. They are a relic of primitive, unguided evolution, a species trapped by the inefficiencies of their own poorly designed genetic code. He saved the human genetic data to the Symposium's database under a new category, evolutionary failures, species of academic interest only. The laboratory erupted in appreciative sounds as the scientists expressed their amusement and agreement with Zephyrian's assessment. The human genome had provided them with an entertaining diversion from their serious research, a reminder of how far their own species had advanced beyond such primitive biological chaos. "Now then," Zephyrian announced as the laughter subsided, "let us proceed to examine the genetic samples from the Rigel system, where we have discovered some truly fascinating examples of guided evolutionary development." The human DNA sample faded from the main display, dismissed and forgotten as the symposium moved on to what they considered more worthwhile subjects. The greatest genetic scientists in the galaxy had examined humanity's biological foundation and found it laughably inadequate. None of them suspected that they had just made the greatest mistake in the history of galactic science. The dormant sections of human DNA, those massive regions of junk genetic material that had amused them so much, were not evolutionary waste products. They were something far more significant, something that would soon force every species in the galaxy to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the nature of biological potential. But, for now, the humans remained an object of scientific mockery, their genetic code filed away as an example of evolution's failures. The galaxy's most brilliant minds had looked at humanity's DNA and seen only chaos and inefficiency. They would soon learn that chaos, when properly unleashed, could be the most terrifying force in the universe. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Genetic Symposium, and Dr. Zephyrian Kethvala had all but forgotten about the amusing human genome sample. His attention had returned to more serious matters, perfecting the genetic modifications that would allow Veltar colonists to adapt to the harsh environments of newly discovered worlds. The research station orbiting Arcturus Prime hummed with constant activity as teams of scientists worked on dozens of critical projects. The Galactic Council had commissioned studies into genetic resistance against a new form of cosmic radiation, improvements to interstellar travel physiology, and enhanced cognitive capabilities for deep space exploration crews. It was during a routine review of the Outer Rim monitoring stations that Zephyrian received the first disturbing report. The data came from Observation Post Tau 7, positioned at the edge of what was known as the Local Group Wilderness, an area of space considered too primitive and dangerous for serious galactic attention. Dr. Kethvala, announced his research assistant, a young Veltar named Xylan whose 3 arms moved nervously as she approached, "We have received some unusual readings from the monitoring stations near the Sol system." Zephyrian's primary brain was focused on genetic protein sequences while his secondary brain processed the interruption. "Sol system?" he asked without looking up from his work. "That primitive star cluster with the evolutionary failure species? What could possibly require our attention there?" Xylan's harmonic voice carried uncertainty. "The energy signatures are unprecedented, sir. The automated monitoring systems have detected massive electromagnetic disturbances, gravitational anomalies, and what appears to be controlled fusion reactions on an industrial scale." This caught the attention of Zephyrian's tertiary brain, which immediately began analyzing the implications. Controlled fusion on an industrial scale required technology that most species didn't develop until they had achieved interstellar travel. Yet according to their records, the humans barely possessed primitive spacecraft. "Display the data," Zephyrian commanded, his 4 arms moving to manipulate the holographic interface. What appeared before him made no sense. The electromagnetic readings showed energy patterns consistent with massive space-based construction projects. The gravitational anomalies suggested the movement of enormous masses through space. Most disturbing of all, the spectral analysis indicated the presence of materials and energy signatures that shouldn't exist anywhere near such a primitive system. "This must be instrument error," Zephyrian declared. "Recalibrate the sensors and run the analysis again." But the recalibration only confirmed what the instruments had detected. Something extraordinary was happening in the Sol system, something that defied every prediction their models had made about human technological capabilities. "Sir," Xylan said hesitantly, "there's more. Long-range scans have detected what appears to be artificial structures throughout the system. Large-scale engineering projects that seem to have appeared almost overnight." Zephyrian's 4 eyes focused intently on the data. The readings suggested construction on a scale that even the most advanced galactic civilizations would find challenging. Massive orbital installations, asteroid mining operations, and what appeared to be some form of stellar engineering around the Sol system's star. "This cannot be the work of the humans," he muttered.
Their genetic limitations make such rapid technological advancement impossible.
Some other species must have invaded their system. The logical explanation was that one of the major galactic powers had decided to exploit the Sol system's resources. But, as Zephyrian examined the energy signatures more closely, he realized they didn't match any known technology. The fusion reactions were more efficient than anything in the galactic database. The gravitational manipulation showed techniques that theoretical physicists had only dreamed about. "Prepare a stealth reconnaissance probe," Zephyrian ordered. "I want detailed scans of the Sol system. If some unknown civilization has developed this level of technology, the Galactic Council must be informed immediately." The probe was launched within hours, its quantum stealth systems making it virtually undetectable as it approached the Sol system. The journey would take several weeks, but, once it arrived, it would provide detailed analysis of whatever was happening in that remote corner of space. While they waited for the probe's data, Zephyrian found himself returning to the human genetic samples again and again. He ran every analysis he could think of, searching for some clue that might explain the incredible energy readings from their system. The genome remained as chaotic and inefficient as ever. The massive sections of dormant genetic material continued to serve no apparent purpose. If anything, deeper analysis revealed even more contradictions and evolutionary impossibilities. When the probe finally reached the Sol system and began transmitting data, what Zephyrian saw challenged everything he thought he knew about technological development and biological limitations. The third planet, Earth, was surrounded by a network of orbital installations that dwarfed anything in galactic civilization. Massive ring structures encircled the planet at various altitudes, each one containing what appeared to be manufacturing facilities, research stations, and population centers. The scale of construction was breathtaking, representing an engineering feat that should have taken millennia to accomplish. But it was the asteroid belt that truly defied comprehension. What had once been scattered rocks and debris had been transformed into an organized network of mining and manufacturing installations. Automated systems moved asteroids like children's toys, breaking them down into component materials and feeding them into vast construction matrices. Most incredible of all was what the humans had done to their star. Solar collection arrays on a scale that boggled the mind had been constructed, harvesting energy at rates that exceeded the total power consumption of most galactic civilizations. Controlled stellar engineering was maintaining perfect solar output while simultaneously increasing the star's efficiency. "This is impossible," Zephyrian whispered as he studied the probe's transmissions. "No species develops this quickly. The humans were barely capable of spaceflight 3 months ago." But the probe's biological scanners provided even more shocking information. The structures were undeniably built by humans. Genetic analysis of organic material throughout the constructions confirmed it beyond any doubt. Somehow, impossibly, the species with the most chaotic and inefficient genetic code in the galaxy had achieved technological advancement that surpassed even the oldest civilizations. "Sir," Xylan announced, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement, "you need to see the long-range scans of human space activity." The data that appeared in the holographic display made Zephyrian's 4 hearts skip in synchronized beats. Human ships, clearly identifiable by their unique energy signatures, were spreading throughout nearby star systems at an incredible pace. Not the slow, cautious expansion of a developing civilization, but the rapid, confident movement of a species that had mastered interstellar travel. Within weeks, human installations had appeared in a dozen nearby systems. Mining operations, research stations, and what appeared to be massive shipbuilding facilities were being constructed at a rate that seemed to violate the physical laws governing industrial development. "How many humans are there?" Zephyrian asked, although he dreaded the answer. Xylan's calculations appeared in the air before them. "Based on energy consumption and construction activity, we estimate their population has increased by several orders of magnitude. They appear to have solved resource limitations, energy distribution, and manufacturing bottlenecks simultaneously." The implications struck Zephyrian like a physical blow. A species with unlimited growth potential, unrestricted by the resource limitations that constrained every other civilization, was expanding into space with technology that exceeded galactic standards. "We must inform the Galactic Council immediately," he declared. "This represents a potential threat to the established order of galactic civilization." But, as he prepared the emergency transmission, new data from the probe made him pause. The humans weren't just building industrial installations and ships. They were conducting research on a scale that dwarfed the combined efforts of all galactic civilizations. Massive research facilities orbited every planet in their system, each one focused on different areas of scientific advancement. Physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, and dozens of fields that galactic science hadn't even explored were being pursued with unlimited resources and incredible speed.
Most disturbing of all, the probe detected research installations dedicated entirely to genetic science. The humans were studying their own DNA with technology and approaches that made the Galactic Genetic Symposium look like children playing with toys. They're not just using their chaotic genetics, Zephyrian realized with growing horror. They're learning to control them. The probe's final transmission before it was detected and disabled by human security systems showed something that would haunt Zephyrian's dreams for cycles to come. Human genetic research had progressed far beyond simple modification and optimization. They had learned to activate the dormant sections of their genome, those massive regions of apparently useless genetic material that had provided so much amusement at the symposium. The junk DNA wasn't junk at all. It was a vast library of genetic potential, evolutionary possibilities that had been preserved and accumulated over millions of years of chaotic development. Where other species had streamlined and optimized their genetics, focusing on specific capabilities, humans had kept everything. Every evolutionary path, every genetic solution, every biological adaptation that had ever emerged in their species' development was still present in their genome, waiting to be activated. They weren't genetically inefficient, they were genetically infinite. As the probe's transmission ended, Zephyrian sat in stunned silence, staring at the empty holographic display. The species he had mocked for their primitive genetics had revealed capabilities that transcended everything galactic science thought possible. Humanity wasn't an evolutionary failure. They were evolution itself, unconstrained and unlimited, with the potential to become anything they chose to become. And now they were awake, aware of their true nature, and expanding into the galaxy with technology that made the greatest civilizations look primitive by comparison. The galaxy's greatest genetic scientist realized that he had made a mistake that would reshape the entire universe. He had dismissed humanity's chaos as weakness, never understanding that chaos was their greatest strength. The humans were coming, and they were bringing their beautiful, terrifying genetic infinity with them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of Dr. Zephyrian Kethvala's initial report. Representatives from every major civilization gathered in the vast chamber on Galactic Central, their forms creating a strange tapestry of evolutionary diversity. The crystalline entities pulsed with nervous energy, the Hivemind Collective's 12 bodies moved in perfect synchronization, and even the ancient Voidwalkers had manifested more solidly than usual. At the center of the chamber, a massive holographic display showed the latest intelligence data from the Sol system. What it revealed had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. In the 6 weeks since Zephyrian's first probe had been destroyed, humanity's expansion had accelerated beyond all comprehension. Human ships now operated in over 50 star systems, each one hosting massive construction projects that dwarfed anything previously thought possible. Their technology had advanced so rapidly that galactic intelligence agencies could barely keep track of the improvements. Honored representatives, began Council Director Vexthera, her ancient crystalline form resonating with barely controlled fear, we face an unprecedented situation. The species we dismissed as evolutionary failures has achieved technological supremacy that threatens the balance of galactic power. The assembled delegates stirred uneasily. For 10,000 years, the galactic order had been stable, with each species occupying its place in a carefully balanced hierarchy of technological and biological capability. The idea that a primitive rim-world species could disrupt this order was almost unthinkable. Dr. Zephyrian stood to address the council, his forearms manipulating holographic displays that showed the latest data. Esteemed colleagues, our initial assessment of human genetics was not merely wrong, it was catastrophically wrong. What we interpreted as evolutionary chaos was actually unlimited evolutionary potential. The display showed human genetic sequences, but now highlighted in ways that revealed their true nature. The dormant sections of human DNA that we dismissed as junk contain genetic information for thousands of different evolutionary paths. They possess the blueprints for capabilities that our species developed separately over millions of years. Explain, demanded Representative Nexus Prime of the HiveMind Collective, their unified voice echoing through the chamber. Zephyrian highlighted specific genetic sequences. The humans can activate genetic templates for enhanced strength similar to the Warclans of Rigel 7. They can develop radiation resistance comparable to the crystal entities. They can enhance their cognitive capabilities beyond even our own Veltar modifications. But, most remarkably, they can combine these capabilities in ways that should be genetically impossible. The implications struck the assembled delegates like a physical force. Each galactic species had achieved mastery in specific areas through millions of years of careful evolutionary development or guided genetic modification. The idea that one species could potentially master all of these capabilities simultaneously was terrifying. Furthermore, Zephyrian continued, their genetic structure allows for rapid adaptive changes. While our modifications require generations to implement and test, humans can activate new genetic templates within a single lifetime. They are not bound by the evolutionary constraints that limit the rest of us. Council Director Vexthera pulsed with urgent light patterns. What is their current military capability? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Military might had always been determined by a combination of technology, resources, and the biological limitations of each species. If humans could transcend those limitations while possessing superior technology and unlimited resources, they could pose an existential threat to every civilization in the galaxy. Unknown, Zephyrian admitted. Our surveillance capabilities have proven inadequate. Human sensor technology has advanced to the point where they detect our stealth systems as easily as we detect primitive radio transmissions. They are aware of our observation attempts and have taken steps to prevent further intelligence gathering. Then, we must assume the worst, declared war leader Gorvash of the Rigel Confederation, his massive form bristling with natural weapons that had made his species legendary warriors. If they pose a threat to galactic stability, they must be contained before they become too powerful to stop. The suggestion of preemptive military action sent ripples of alarm through the chamber. Galactic civilization had been built on principles of non-interference and peaceful coexistence. The idea of attacking a developing species simply because they showed potential was almost unthinkable. But Representative Voidwalker Alpha materialized more fully to speak. The mathematical probabilities are disturbing. If humans continue their current rate of technological and biological advancement, they will surpass our combined civilizations within solar cycles. We may be witnessing the emergence of a species that could render all others obsolete. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Obsolescence was the ultimate fear of every advanced civilization, the possibility that their millions of years of development and cultural achievement could be surpassed by a younger, more adaptable species. There is another factor we must consider, Zephyrian said quietly. Human expansion patterns suggest they are not randomly exploring space. They appear to be specifically targeting systems with strategic value, resources that would support massive population growth, and locations that could serve as staging points for further expansion. The holographic display showed human expansion routes, revealing a pattern that military strategists would recognize immediately. The humans weren't just exploring, they were positioning themselves for something much larger. They're preparing for contact, realized Council Director Vexthera, her crystalline form dimming with the implications. They know we exist, and they're building the infrastructure necessary to interact with galactic civilization from a position of strength. The revelation that humanity was aware of galactic civilization and actively preparing for contact changed everything. This wasn't a primitive species stumbling toward first contact, this was a rapidly advancing civilization positioning itself to enter galactic society as an equal or superior power. We have perhaps one opportunity to establish contact on favorable terms, suggested Representative Quantum Mind of the Silicon Collective. If we approach them now, before their preparations are complete, we might be able to establish peaceful diplomatic relations. Or, countered War Leader Gorvash, we might reveal our own capabilities and give them additional intelligence to use against us. We know nothing about human intentions or their willingness to coexist with other species. The debate that followed revealed the fundamental dilemma facing galactic civilization. Every option carried enormous risks.
Diplomatic contact might lead to peaceful coexistence, or it might provide humans with the intelligence they needed to dominate their neighbors.
Military action might contain the threat, or it might provoke a war against an enemy whose true capabilities remained unknown.
As the arguments continued, Zephyrian found himself studying the human genetic data again, searching for clues about their likely behavior patterns.
What he found offered little comfort. Human genetics contain templates for every possible survival strategy.
They could be peaceful cooperative partners or aggressive territorial expansionists.
They could be rational negotiators or emotional warriors. The genetic chaos that had once seemed like a weakness now revealed itself as ultimate adaptability.
Humans could become whatever they needed to become to survive and thrive in any situation.
Esteemed colleagues, Zephyrian interrupted the heated debate.
I believe we are approaching this situation incorrectly. We are thinking about humans as we think about ourselves, as species with fixed characteristics and predictable behaviors.
But human genetics suggests they are something entirely different.
He manipulated the genetic display to show the full scope of human potential. They are not a species in the traditional sense. They are a biological framework capable of expressing any evolutionary strategy. They could become our greatest allies or our most dangerous enemies, depending entirely on how they choose to develop their capabilities.
The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives contemplated this possibility.
A species that could choose its own evolutionary path, that could adapt its behavior and capabilities to any situation, represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Then, our approach must be based on ensuring they choose to become our allies, declared Council Director Vexthera.
We must make cooperation more beneficial to them than conflict. And if they choose conflict anyway, asked War Leader Gorvash. The question hung unanswered in the air.
If humanity chose the path of aggression and expansion, if they decided that galactic civilization represented competition to be eliminated rather than neighbors to be welcomed, then every species in the galaxy would face extinction. As the emergency session concluded with no clear resolution, Zephyrian remained in the chamber, staring at the human genetic data that had started this crisis. The beautiful, chaotic double helix that he had once mocked now looked like the most dangerous weapon ever created.
Humanity's junk DNA wasn't junk at all.
It was a genetic library containing the evolutionary solutions of 1 billion years of biological development. It was potential incarnate, waiting to be unleashed upon a galaxy that had grown comfortable with its limitations.
The greatest genetic scientist in galactic history finally understood what he was looking at.
Human DNA wasn't a blueprint for a single species, it was a blueprint for evolution itself. Humans could become anything they chose to become, and their rapid technological advancement suggested they were learning to make those choices with frightening speed. As news of humanity's expansion reached every corner of galactic civilization, species that had considered themselves the pinnacle of evolutionary development began to question their assumptions. The galaxy's established order, built on millions of years of careful development and specialization, faced challenge from a species that refused to be constrained by the rules that governed all other life. Humanity was awakening to its true potential, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Dr. Zephyrian Kethvala had made the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history, and he desperately wished he had been wrong. The species he had dismissed as evolutionary failures were revealing themselves to be evolution's ultimate success, and they were just beginning to understand what they could become. The age of human expansion had begun, and no power in the galaxy could predict where it would end.